Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Cesar and
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Well, hello everybody once again, and welcome to episode 104 of the Project Management for the Masses podcast. My name is Cesar Abade, your host, and I have here on the line Traci Duez, who is my co-host for this series. How are you, Traci?
I am terrific, Cesar. Great to be here with you again.
I'm having so much fun with these episodes, and we were just talking about this before starting recording, and thinking about what's next after this series and next year. And we might share some of that with everyone come the new year. But for now, we have goodies planned all the way through Christmas and New Year's. And I'm excited about that. And having you here with me, Traci, had me thinking about possibilities, and I felt like I was thinking about different things, which is actually the topic of today's episode, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. Thinking about different things, because usually we think about the same things. Right.
So let's talk about that. So
right.
I feel like we've actually it's not. It's probably intentional. We got to this point by, we talked about mindfulness and mindset and thinking habits and self-leadership, right? Which is basically all in your mind and how you think. So today we're going to talk about thinking habits. How do you explain that to somebody who's never heard of it?
Yeah. So thinking habits. There were studies done that are kind of cool that talk about. I don't even know who counted them, but they count how many thoughts you think in a day, and it's tens of thousands of thoughts. And then they said, well, like about 90% of them are the same as you thought yesterday or the day before or the day before. So you have these habits that are ingrained in you, these thinking patterns that you don't even think twice about. They're just happening inside your brain without you even thinking about it. And so when it comes to self-leadership, I believe we have to become aware of what the heck's going on in between our ears in order for us to shift or to lead or to do anything differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we should be concerned about this if we're trying to change, right? If you're happy where you are and you don't want to get better, then why change your thinking habits, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're good where you are and you believe the rest of the world should, acquiesce to whatever your needs and wants and desires are, and that's where you want to be, terrific. Good luck with that, first of all. But yeah. I
have a feeling you're probably not listening to a podcast episode named around thinking habits, though. So right. Maybe we're talking to nobody here. But
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So, yes. And this is really true. Like little things. Like I think we talked about this before here in this series. I read a book about memory, improving my memory because of that. That was. I had this fixed mindset on the fact that, hey, I have a poor memory, and, read a book that gets you changing the way you think, how you think about things that you need to remember. And that helped me. Another one was getting up in the morning, how difficult it is. And I read a book called, I think it's The Miracle Morning by, forget his name, but we'll put the link in the show notes. And he talks about, it's hard to, it's never hard to get up in the morning when you're a kid and it's Christmas morning, right? Because you go to bed at night thinking, here's the word, about the excitement of what's going to be. So when you wake up in the morning, you're basically thinking the last thought that you had when you fell asleep, right? That's how the brain works. And that kind of opened up possibilities for me. Like if I go to bed at night and I'm excited about what I'm going to do first when I wake up. Let's say it's, I'm going to read this book that I'm enjoying or whatever, or exercise, and it's going to feel great. I wake up in that mindset and I'm happy and I jump out of bed, and the days that I forget to do that, those are the days that I hit the snooze button 500 times, like this morning, for example. So is that an example of changing my thinking habits?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about what do you do consciously? So we've talked about mindfulness, right? And being aware of what's going on inside of our own heads. Mike talked about mindset, being, willing to make a shift and not just have your brain keep going on autopilot. Because that, to be honest, that's the easiest thing to do, is just to keep doing what you've always done. But then you'll get the results that you're always getting. And if you do want to grow and improve, we got to find a way to shift into those different perspectives, because that's really what the books do for you, or this podcast, or they give you a different perspective from which to see the world, and they just take you out of one thinking habit. And I like to see them as a neuro pathway, more like a neuro superhighway, right? Because you've used it so often. Whenever you have an aha moment, if you ever have any of those, what happens is it's a new neural connection being made. So it's like somewhere in your brain, there's a little man. This is how I see it, Cesar, I don't know, with a sickle. And he just like created a path. He chopped down all the weeds, and then he connected two things. So there was just like this little pathway with branches all patted down. Well, the more you use that neural pathway, well, pretty soon the branches are out of the way, and now you're just down to the dirt, and then somebody throws some gravel on there, and then, we pave it, and then we add, like here in Houston, I think we have 10-lane highway just on one side, and there's 10 more lanes on the other. And so that's what a thinking habit really is it's just a real easy road or neural pathway for your brain to go down, because you've thought those thoughts over and over and over again. And those patterns, your brain loves patterns, and it loves to recognize them and then use them. Right. So being able to identify where we have those neuro superhighways and how they might slow us down from where we are today. Right. Because for me, when I was growing up, Mom told me not to talk to strangers. Right. And so I didn't like strangers. I mean, they were dangerous. I didn't want to talk to them. And so anytime I met people, I turned away from them. And this went on for decades for me, because it became a neuro superhighway. So while it supported me while I was 4 years old, not so much when I was 34 years old.
Yeah. So I think your upbringing, the way your parents think about things, really influence how you think. Because I can speak from experience. I've been married 12 years, living with somebody who I didn't grow up with, who grew up with different parents, and the way she and I think about things is different, right? Like we have a great marriage, but the way we think about things is different. And over the years, we kind of came to this middle ground, right? That and basically it's like growing up again, like now I have a new way of thinking about things. And when I go visit my folks, I'm constantly thinking, what are they thinking? How would you come to that conclusion? Because I used to be in the same kind of mindset and I never thought about it. But now that I'm in a different thinking, I have new pathways, I guess, in my brain, in my mind. It's easier to see that, hey, that's just a different kind of way of thinking about things, right?
Absolutely. And isn't that true? Once we get, close to other people and we see how they think, and that opens up more perspectives to us, right? We start using other neural pathways in our brain, and then you go back home, which I just did here for the holidays. And what ends up happening is you're like, really? Like, where did these people come from? Because your habits have changed, but theirs haven't, right? And you're like, wait a minute. That's mom, that's dad, that's whoever, right? That's just how they think. So, yeah, absolutely. So, and that what's really cool is I think I alluded to this in the past, that you can actually measure your thinking, and not what you think. I don't want to know all of that, right? That can be kind of weird. But how you think and how you make decisions. And we can actually measure what some of your thinking patterns are, and which leads to the choices you make, the decisions you make, the actions that you take, and eventually the results that you end up getting. But right now, not right now. I'm older now, but I still blame most of those thinking habits on my parents. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you measure ones and you don't like them.
Yeah. I tell you, and it's funny because, maybe people listening right now, like a concrete example, like for example, right here in the household, like I grew up in Brazil and people are just more relaxed, right? There's not a whole lot of planning going on, people plan for big projects and stuff, but day-to-day life is way more, let's say, lax, right? And I married Amy, who is from German, Scottish kind of background, and there's a lot of planning. Her family plans a lot, and sometimes too much. So when the way we react to the same event, for example, let's say somebody sends us an email saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in town next weekend. Can I stop by for coffee?" Right? In my mind, I'm like, sure. What? You don't even just show up. We're always here. We homeschool and I work from home. There's always coffee in the pot, right? That's where I go. Amy goes like, "Oh my goodness. Okay, need to clean. I need to do this. We know that cable, that wire that's hanging, in the driveway. Need to move that. We need to, that coffee, like last time we bought that coffee, that wasn't very good, was it? Yeah, no, we need to try that other one." And then she's texting her friends, "Did you like that other coffee that you bought last week?" So, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden we're like, are we even talking about the same thing? But we're both reacting to the same event in different ways. And what you're saying is that we can actually change, right? So if we're not happy with the way that we're reacting or thinking about things, we can change that.
Absolutely. And we can measure like what you're valuing compared to what she's valuing. Because in the moment you see the same exact thing, but that different perspective is you're valuing one thing and she's valuing another. And we can measure that, and you can look at that, because I think it's, especially in today's society. I mean, have you noticed what people typically do when they're looking at things from one perspective and you see it from another? They end up calling you names.
Oh yeah, they get offended.
Right. Exactly. And there's no need for that. There's plenty of perspectives to go around.
Right.
And there are ways that you can shift into perspectives that allow you to not get so offended or taken aback by differences.
So how do we do that?
Well, thanks for asking.
12 minutes into this, so finally you got to that point.
Yeah, finally, there you go. So, well, have you ever been asked to take another an assessment from a boss or a supervisor or something like that?
Yes, and I've asked people to do that for me too. Yeah.
And most people probably answer those assessments pretty honestly. However, if you're someone, like me, who maybe had some low self-esteem or didn't believe in themselves, you really wouldn't answer them in an honest way. And so what I did when my bosses asked me to take assessments, because I was one of those people that I tried to cover up my low self-esteem, how I thought about myself, by overperforming, right? So people were like, "Oh my gosh, she's the director of an IT consulting company," or whatever. And I was like 30 something years old. And they thought, "Oh, she's so wonderful," or what. I wasn't. I felt like a big loser. And I was just covering up the fact that I was a big loser by overachieving or performing. And so whenever I was asked to take those assessments, like usually I was trying to get a promotion or something like that, I would answer them the way I thought my boss wanted me to answer them, so that I could get to the next step or be seen as wonderful or something like that. Now, I know probably no one listening to this podcast has ever thought that way, but I did. So I took this assessment. It was called the Hartman Value Profile. And when I was taking it, I was so ticked off, Cesar. It was just so amazing to me because I didn't know how to trick it. I didn't know how to manipulate it. It would ask me weird things, like to rank 2 sets of 18 items. That's all the test was. And so it would ask me to rank things like a good meal, a devoted scientist, a baby. And I would put the most valuable one at the top and rank them according. And then at the bottom, the assessment was really whacked. And it asked me to, again, ranking according to value. The things at the bottom, the worst things were things like slavery, burning a witch at the stake, blowing up an airliner in flight. So, and I was like, and so you have to decide what this assessment is trying to do, is measure how you think, right? And so you have to decide, well, which one of those is worse than the other, and try and figure it out. So what I ended up doing was just taking the assessment, and then I looked online and had to figure out what the heck it was. And that's when I ended up discovering this passion that I have now for axiology. And we talked a little bit about that last time in terms of the science of value and value dynamics. And so it totally changed my life. It totally changed my self-esteem, of all things. And it's kind of cool to be able to actually go into your brain and see how it's working. Might be scary, though.
I was just thinking that, yeah. Do I want to know what's going on in there?
Well, what it helps you do is identify those patterns that you have, because you develop them for a good reason. Like not talking to strangers. I developed that habit for a really good reason, because my mom didn't want me to get taken from the A&P grocery store. And I never was. So that habit really worked for me. However, when you're the director of an IT consulting company and having to talk to 100 consultants, some of them are strangers, and that's not a good habit to have. And so our patterns that we've developed, we develop them for a good reason. It's just now what this assessment allows my clients to do, is take a look at your thinking and say, hey, wait a minute, does this still support you? Does this overvaluing or over-focus on improving things, does it make your life better? Well, yeah, it does. People say, yeah, it does. Okay, well, do you ever churn? Do you ever spin on things? Tweak them till you run out of time. Right. Usually, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you do that, then you might be actually taking away value from other areas of your life, because there's a point where it was good enough, but that was probably hours ago. Okay. So that's just an example of some of the things that the assessment can measure in terms of how you think and give you a look into those patterns.
Right. And you, I will share this again at the end of the episode, but you can find this, there's going to be a way for you to take this assessment if you go to pmforthemasses.com/104 for episode 104. Yes. So pmforthemasses.com/104. But just, until we actually take the assessment there, which is free, by the way. How is it like a we say this at work, the TLDR, the too long didn't read, a way of of how do you change your thinking habits? Like, could you? Is there like a bullet point kind of way of approaching this?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and you talked about this a little earlier. Remember when you said, hey, I didn't think I had a good memory, so I read a book.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I've done that too. And bosses do that all the time in the performance reviews. They'll be like, oh, Cesar, you're wonderful at this. You are magnificent. You weren't so good at this. And so go take a class on it.
Yeah.
Right. So what ends up happening is you do take the class and you come back, and for me, it was always speaking in front of people. They would say, Traci, you suck at speaking in front of people. Go take a class on public speaking. So I'd go take a class. It wouldn't really help because it wasn't really that I didn't know how to speak. It was that I had low self-esteem. And so it just gets on this cycle. And so there's this missing link between learning a skill, which I did. I learned the skill, and then being able to perform the actions. Mm-hmm. And that missing link are these thinking patterns and habits that we have. So if we want to change them, typically gurus have always said you have to use positive affirmations. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So are you saying they don't work?
Well, I'm not actually saying they don't work, because people have used them for a long time, right? They've used their I am statements and I am this and I am that. Yeah. And it does work. It just takes a super long time for you to reprogram your brain, because when I would say things like, I'm a great public speaker, my very next thought was, what kind of public speaker, what kind of loser has to tell herself she's a great public speaker? Because there was no reality. There was no evidence to do it. And so your brain will always look to pull things back into its patterns. However, if you ask your brain a question, it can't help but consider the possibilities. Right? So if I say, hey, Cesar, what's the weather like there in Toronto today?
It's gray and a bit wet, and I'd say in Fahrenheit to be in the 40s.
Yeah. So by asking that question, you totally shifted what you were thinking about. And here's the cool thing. You didn't even have to answer it in order to make the shift. You just had to consider it. Right?
Yeah.
So if I say, hey, are your feet cold? You don't answer it. You don't have to. I know what you just thought about.
Right.
You just thought about your feet. And so questions get your brain to shift a lot faster than I am statements or affirmations or things like that. Again, if you use them and they're good for you, terrific. However, if you turn them into a question, you'll see change happen even faster. So people say, whatever. Well, I'm a great public speaker. If you turn it into a question, like, how can I be? Or what can I do to become a great public speaker? Now your brain is focusing on, it's going to help you get there rather than you trying to tell it what to do.
Or why am I a good public speaker? Because that assumes that you already are, and which I think would play along with the affirmation, right? And then you have to answer that question, like, okay, why am I a good public speaker? Oh, I show up on time. I'm prepared, and then you come up with a list of reasons why. And all of a sudden you're thinking about you doing that. And then the next thing is, okay, how can I be better? Right. And which is another question as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so if you train your brain to ask you questions rather than to tell you statements, you're going to get to where you want to go a lot faster, because nobody likes to be told what to do. Not even by yourself. Like if I tell myself, hey, don't eat that big cheeseburger, get the salad instead. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like you don't like to be told what to do. Yeah. But if I ask myself a question, hey, you want to fit in those party clothes for the holidays, don't you? Oh, shoot. Yeah, I do. And then so I don't even have to ask myself about the hamburger or the salad. I just say, hey, and so programming those questions into your head is what's going to get you to become the person you aspire to be and to do the things that you aspire to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
And there's more of that in the online assessment, right?
Yeah, and the online assessment, what we're going to do is we're going to scientifically measure. This assessment's based in math, so we're going to scientifically measure how you think, and we'll let you know what your strengths are, and then we'll give you the questions that cause your brain to shift into your cognitive asset, as we call it, or your thinking strength. And so you'll be able to use the thinking habits that are going to generate the greatest value by asking yourself questions. And their questions are in there, and they're associated right with the measurement that you get.
Cool.
So it's kind of cool.
Yes, and again, you can find that at pmforthemasses.com/104. Now, before we go today, there's a webinar coming up, right?
Absolutely, yes. I like to start the year off and give people some information, some things that they can use to start a great, well, in this case, 2018. And so on January 2nd and January 3rd, it's going to be the same webinar both times. But I'm going to be doing a webinar called Ask and You Shall Achieve. Get it? Like,
Yes.
So ask and you shall achieve. And I hope people will join. We'll leave that in the show notes too, a link so that they can sign up for a free webinar. And it'll be about, 50 minutes of content.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I will warn them, I will have something to sell. But please don't let that stop you from showing up. Show up. And then if you don't want to buy anything, just get off after about 55 minutes and you'll have some next steps to take. You're actually going to have some questions that you can use to ask yourself and to ask your team. If you have a team, you'll come away with questions that you can use all throughout 2018.
Okay. And so to confirm, the webinar is totally 100% free. And you can attend January 2nd and 3rd, 2018. Now, if people are listening to this in the future, which podcasts do that sometimes, this might be 2025 right now. Is there a way to go back and watch it, or is it only live?
There is a way to watch it. I think the webinar replay only stays up for a couple of weeks. So if they're a couple of weeks out, they can do that. And if not, there will be a link where they can sign up to listen to the next one, to sign up for the next one when it happens. It'll happen periodically.
Cool. And again, you can find all this information at pmforthemasses.com/104. Traci, that was some good food for thought, good questions to ask myself here as I start my day this Friday, this cold December Friday. Thank you so much for your time again. It's always awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you. It is always fun. So I hope to see you next time.
We should keep doing this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thanks, Traci.
Thanks, Cesar.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com